Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you for being here. Mi nombre es Cristal. I'm joining you all today from the native lands of the Arapaho, Cheyenne, and Ute here in Denver, Colorado. And I'm really looking forward to our conversation today and to being with our presenter. She's bringing a topic that is very important to our community, especially right now, and is personally important to me as a first-generation immigrant. Our guest today is Diana Diaz Madera. Diana, thank you so much for joining us. Would you introduce yourself?
Of course. Thank you so much for this space, for facilitating today, and for to Latino Outdoors for the invitation. I'm so excited to be here. My name is Diana Diaz. I am a licensed clinician and human rights activist. I am joining you today from Tomba Land, and I am based out of LA, but I am an Ecuadorian immigrant, and I am the founder of Corazón Norte. So I always like to tell a little bit about Corazón Norte. It's an organization we started about 2 years ago, and our whole mission is really to serve immigrant communities in mental health, to ensuring that we are creating spaces where people feel like they belong, where people feel that that was created for them. And we do a lot of workshops in the community. We do a lot of education and materials for both immigrant communities and the providers that are serving them. So I have really am living my little sueño of creating spaces that were meant for us by us, and that focus on healing and not just surviving. So lots of honoring our culture, our cultura, our comunidad, spaces where it's just not, we're not just tolerated, but we're celebrated, and that we base our healing in who we are and who our ancestors have been as well.
Gracias, Diana. I love hearing you just beginning to chat about this. I wanted to share too, I have personally used quite a few of your resources and have really found them so helpful. I'm a regional coordinator here in Colorado. I'm really excited to learn more from you and to be able to take that back also to continue to support our programming that we do with youth and with families, because we know that they've been impacted too. We're going to have a wonderful presentation, and then we'll have an opportunity for some question and answer. But first, I just want to highlight, we're here today with the theme of Cuidarnos es Cuidarlos, and to highlight our Semillitas Outdoors celebration that we have every year. For those that don't know, Semillitas Outdoors is Latino Outdoors week-long celebration of Latina children and their families. This year, the celebration falls from Saturday, April 25th to Saturday, May 3rd. I think right now, our community is finding a lot of different ways to celebrate, even though it doesn't feel like it's a time for celebration. And this is why we wanted to have this conversation, because our Semillitas and our families do really need us right now. Our theme this year is community and movimiento, and with that in mind, we're wanting to connect folks with youth mental health resources as it relates to current immigration issues. And so we're so excited, Diana, that you'll be able to share more with us. And so I'll pass it off to you to lead us into learning.
Sure. And I love the semillitas and the fact that we have this duality, right? That we can be feeling sadness and rage and anger, but we can also feel joy, and having those spaces for joy is so, so crucial. So I'm so glad that you are doing that. With that, I'm going to share my screen quick. Are you able to see my screen?
Not yet.
Not yet? 1 second. There we go. What about now?
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay. You see it in full mode, right? All right. So yeah, like it was mentioned before, today the theme is Cuidarnos, is Cuidarlos, practices to care for our hearts and the heart of the youth that we support. I always like to start with acknowledging things that our heart already knew, but that it's important that we name it. And here we have some data on how much it's impacting our children in their mental health immigration system. So we know for a fact that the presence of having at least one undocumented family member increases the likelihood that kids experience anxiety, depression, ADHD, what we see in the surface, these rule breaking behaviors when underneath there's just a lot of pain, right? We also know that the detention and deportation of family members has been associated with a lot of higher risks for suicide behaviors and thoughts, alcohol use in our youth. So this is why it's so important to actually take a step back and talk about these things and naming them, the harm that has been happening in our communities. So today I wanted to start with that. But also I wanted to, again, we go back to the duality of hearing that yes, we have harm that is being done, but we also have lessons that we have learned from the hearts of our youth, from our comunidades too. Um, and I like this quote that sometimes it all it takes is one grounded, caring adult anywhere. That may be in school, it may be in a clinic. In this case, it could be you on the trail that sees the children, that stays close with them and reminds them that they belong, to begin healing what has been the world trying to take away from them. So you don't need to be perfect. You just need to be present, and you need to be steady and real with them. And that starts by protecting our own capacity to be there for youth, which is what we're going to be talking today about. Some quick tools that you can use it for yourself, but also you can model to the youth that you're serving and to your children. These tools, the idea is that we use what we have, and I always tell people, please use things that you have already worked for you. We know that you at least have one tool because you're still here, and we'll introduce you to a few new ones to see if you want to try them to help reduce some of the anxiety, but also it helps us in these high stress situations. I also just wanted to mention that I do have the sequoia trees here, and the reason is because one of the reasons that the sequoia trees, I found out maybe, I don't know, 15 years ago or so, that the roots aren't really that deep, even though they're so tall, but instead that the roots interlace with each other, and that's how they are able to remain standing up strong and tall. And it's the same for us as people. If we are in community, that's a tool that we already have that helps us with our mental health. Another tool that I always like to share with people is that we really, before we look anywhere else, we look within ourselves. What are some of those things that we are carrying? What are some of the stories that we hold inside of us that are impacting the way that we show up in our personal life, in our professional life, in our volunteer life? So things like, what parts of my story are being stirred? What emotions am I carrying today during this outing? And what are some things that I need to release or be able to put aside for a little bit? This practice of being able to check in with yourself is a preventive practice, and being able to know what capacity you can show up. We cannot always be 120%. We may show up sometimes at 50%, 70%, sometimes at 30%, and that's okay. But knowing that, it allows you to use whatever tool helps with you, or to reach out to your community for support. Usually we do a check-in. Since this is a webinar, we're not doing it, but I always like to say this is such a simple tool that you can use, and you can do these even when you go on outings, and just do like a check of the group. How are you feeling right now? Because we often ask kids and we ask everybody, are you okay? How are you doing today? And they say, okay. But we can't get more out of that question. Instead, if maybe we ask, from a scale to 0 to 10, 10 being you won the lottery today, and 0, it was really hard to get out of bed today, where are you at today? So it's a really great tool to just check, and you don't have to follow up with anything. You can just say, just notice that some may be at 10, some may be 5, some may be 3s, that we are all experiencing similar situations, but we're not experiencing the same. And this creates also a sense of empathy in your group, in knowing that maybe somebody that you're hiking with is feeling really low. So how do I show up for them? Or maybe it's myself. And what do I need to refuel me? A second tool that I'd like to always share is the window of tolerance. You may be familiar with these. And the idea is that we want to try to stay in a state of the green part, in that tolerance space. And right now it's really hard because there's so many outside things impacting us, that it's hard to be here. But and I joke that between the red and the green should be an orange because we're all so stressed out. And the idea is that as soon as you start seeing what are some areas that you are feeling checked out, like you may be in the blue, you're having difficulty feeling, you're feeling depressed, you may be just not having that ability to connect with others or to even have conversations, right? We need to start using some of the skills that has helped you in the past. Same if we're going to the red, we're too much, too aroused, right? We're having these stress patterns, unclear thoughts, we're having anxious thoughts. And it's a good way of figuring out and training your brain and your body to listen to what your body's telling you about your stress and your emotions. So the next two are a couple tools, and then this one I really like. This is more like maintenance, so soul care, right? It's just thinking about how can we do more witnessing. How can we see what's happening right now without taking full responsibility? Yes, we can do a lot. We can be in protests. We can help, in food distributions. We can support giving rights to our immigrant neighbors. But there's sometimes some things that we cannot take everything on all at once. So more witnessing is the practice of being able to see things and do the best that you can with the resources and the capacity that you have without feeling that guilt. And that goes hand in hand with the forgiveness practices of being able to release self blame for circumstances that are beyond our control. And also being able to have some emotional boundaries to be able to say, today was a lot, this was too much for me, and I cannot carry this alone. And this is something that often we were not taught to reach out for help. We're taught to like, ponte fuerte y dale, right? Um, but this is important that we are able to share the load with others. Of course, asking with them if they're in a place that is possible. And one thing that I always like to tell folks is when I do trainings to really think about what is something when you're feeling too stressed out and that the weight is too heavy, what is something that I can delegate, something that I can drop because we don't need to be doing all the things at once, and what's something that I can take accountability for my wellness. That may be a simple walk, it may be taking a hot shower for 5 minutes, it may be texting back your best friend that checked in with you 3 weeks ago, whatever that is, what is your accountability for wellness? And then we move to now, okay, that's like your practice long term. What are some things that you can do during this time that are readily accessible when we may feel anxious, sad, anger, rage? And what are some things that we can do to help our body have a break? Micro breaks are absolutely great because while it is amazing that we can take time to go on hikes and walks or gym, that may take an hour or 2 hours. But what is something that we can do within our work setting? Or even when you're walking the kids in the hikes, what is something that you can do there? Like a quick stretch, a mindful breathing exercise that may be like 30 seconds. We also have visual imagery, so trying to picture something that is important to you that in the past has helped you feel at peace and safety. I always tell the story of my grandfather, who was a wonderful man, and he helped me out when I was a child and I lived in a very chaotic home environment. He'll take me out and he'll sit me at the magnolia tree to see hummingbirds, and he'll explain me that the colibris are the only bird that can go all sides and can go back and forth to the side to the other side, and that's how in life we have the ability to move, to be resourceful, to continue to move in different places. And I remember feeling a lot calmer after following that, and that's just an image that happened to be there, and I didn't know at the time, but was my first introduction to grounding. Also, resourcing is great, something that you can hold that is tangible within you. It could be something that you remember a smell, you remember a feel, or it can be something that you carry with you. Stones are great. I always carry this one because it makes me feel really, it's very cool to touch. It helps me to see that it's green, which is my favorite color if you haven't seen it. Also, being able to have some totes. So this one, for example, says paz. So carry something that is important to you, and you can do this at home with a word that is something that you know and nourishes you, that it's important to you. Another one is herbs. So I usually tend to take walks, and I don't share widely with my neighbors, but sometimes I do pick a little bit of lavender or rosemary or whatever it is in my walk, and to be able to ground ourselves through sensory. To use all our senses to be able to ground ourselves. And one topic that I do want to talk about is that currently, for a lot of our immigrant communities and ourselves, and even if you're not an immigrant, the environment may not be feeling safe. So we cannot ask people to ground themselves when outside doesn't feel safe, right? Asking folks to close their eyes when they may be hypervigilant. So being able to explain that grounding in this context may look like just reducing a little bit that fear while it's still being alert. So an alert grounding exercise, and being able to acknowledge that it is very difficult to find, to be in the hearing now, right now, because it is a place that for many of us may not feel safe. And always use the wisdom of your grandparents, whatever has been something that got passed down to you that you love. For example, for me, are hummingbirds, are herbs. What is something from your culture that you can use and incorporate? This is, again, we go back to talking about senses. What are things that you can touch, something you can see, smell, hear, or taste? I like to call it an apapacho kit. Make sure that you do one for yourselves. You can do one for your kids, and put your favorite things that help you ground yourself. Here we have some of the things that we use for ours. So mint is really good to be able to help you come back and help you use your senses, something that you smell. So rose water, lavender, something citrusy is always good. I like to have a little timer because it gives you 1 minute of do some deep breathing, and that's also really helpful for youth to be able to see, okay, I'm almost done, I'm there, which is a way of engaging them, and also to help them have a visual of what's going on versus saying, we'll do four breaths, right? Kids are much easier to engage that way. You can do it in little kids. We did it with kids that were in Head Start. And it was really good because the parents could put little notes to the kids in there, and the kids would do drawings and then put them back in the mailbox. It's a way of connecting and working on attachment. Because what happens right now, a lot of our parents may be disconnected, not because they want to, but because they are in fight or flight mode. So to be able to intentionally leave messages to our kids, it's very, very important. That was a lot of tools. And again, I'll go back to please start with something that you already know that it already works for you. And another way that we're going to move in the next part of this presentation, it's going to be some tools that you can use with immigrant families or yourself if you're impacted to help reduce some of the anxiety ahead of time. We know that we cannot we cannot do much about the incredible harm of family separation, detention, and the persecution of immigrant communities. But we can know is that we can do some harm reduction. So we have created a few tools. I want to introduce you to the first one, which is a collaboration that I was invited to. It's an app called the Ready Now app, and it was created by Human Rights First, which is an organization that has been doing advocacy and representation of asylum seekers for over 50 years, as well as Acacia Justice Center, which does, again, legal representation and does a lot of work and advocacy for unaccompanied minors. So the app in itself has been created. We started working right after the elections on these, and we just released it to the public about 5 months ago because we wanted to make sure that we had a lot of time in make sure that it was safe for the community to use. It is free to anybody to use. Currently, it's in 7 languages, and we hope to be able to get there to 20. And what the app does is it helps immigrants make an emergency plan ahead of time. So that way you can input who's going to take care of my children if I get detained? What school do they need to be picked up? What is their allergies? Do they have an IEP in this school? Do you have an individualized education plan? That it would be helpful for whoever's taking care of my child to know what his needs are. Also, we added and we made sure that we work with our community. We did focus groups. What else should we add? And something that came up was somebody saying, hey, I take care of my grandma, my abuelita. What happens if I get detained? So we added a section 2 for who's going to take over abuelitos or anybody that is a senior care. And of course, we also know that our perritos are family. So we also, and our gatos and any other pets. So we added a section for pet care as well. So those are pre-enter. And let's say that somebody unfortunately is in close contact with ICE, you're seeing them down the road. You press the button for about 1.5 seconds, the red send alert button, and that gets deployed immediately to their emergency contact information that was pre-entered. And that could be your emergency contact, it could be a lawyer if you added them there, and it immediately deletes from your phone. It does not use the cloud. We do not keep any information. We do not store information for the same reason in case it gets seized by ICE. This is a way of protecting our community. So that gets deployed and lets them know, hey, this is my pinned location. I have been in contact with ICE. Here's my plan. Please take care of my children, pick them up at school at 3 p.m. and so on and so on. The other thing that it does is for people to give them an option if they would like to be connected with a trusted legal aid network nationwide. So it doesn't matter that you're not in LA. It could be that you're in Minneapolis. You could be in Iowa, wherever you are. If you opt in, it will help you connect with somebody that may be able to help you. And I want to make sure that I say it doesn't guarantee representation, but it does guarantee a referral and assistance to be able to locate your loved one. And, the other piece that it also does is to be able to give you that location. So if your pickup truck got on the side of the road, maybe your wife, your partner, your friend, whoever your contact information was, is able to go there and pick up the truck as well. So this is a way, it's a harm reduction tool. Again, it's not going to take away the trauma of family separation, but we're hoping that by reducing some of the chaos when the crisis happens, by people knowing what to do, it'll help our communities. And you can download it in the App Store and on Google Play. I'm going to play you a little video that it will show you a little more about how it works.
If you're an immigrant in this country, the threat of an ICE encounter can be frightening. You deserve to feel prepared and supported, no matter what. Ready Now is a free, secure app that helps you create a simple emergency plan and put it into action when you need it. With just one click, you can send alerts to pre-selected emergency contacts and legal aid. Make sure your support network has the information they need to take action fast. Set up messages for your legal team or automatically request help from a large network of no-cost legal support services. You can also create messages to make sure your family is cared for if you can't be with them. Ready Now will send messages to trusted contacts with instructions for emergency childcare, pet care, or elder care. Ready Now even helps your community to find you within the system and advocate for your needs, so you're not alone. Ready Now was developed by immigration advocates and lawyers with digital security experts to ensure that your personal information and messages are protected, even if your phone is seized. Preparation is power. The Ready Now app helps you make a plan, respond quickly, and protect what's important to you, your loved ones. Download it today and get started.
So, and you can also find more information. We have a website. It's readynowapp.org, and you can find FAQs too about the safety features, which are very important for us, and also about the trauma-informed features that we use when developing the app. Along with that, I wanted to just mention some of the resources in Corazón Norte that we also have. We created a bunch of guides for folks to be able to help them, guide them through the emergency preparedness. So to be able to take care of their heart while they're doing these, and we cover things like, how do you even start this conversation with your kids? No parent should have to have these words to talk about separation, possible deportation. So we created the tool number 2, which is Consejos para iniciar la conversación. It's giving you the wording, like las palabras para empezar that conversation, to kind of get it started and then make it your own. Right. We also have the tool number 1, which talks you through things for school, things like making sure that they, if they have an IEP or any other needs, same for health, and as well as also talking about how it's important to be open to having these conversations with folks about helping you be who, if you're going to ask somebody to take care of your children, to be okay. And understanding that that's a big ask and they may not be able to. So to be able to take that information, say, thank you for letting me know. I still want you in the team for my child in case I get detained. I'm going to try to find a different person, but would you be available to, take him out for ice cream if I'm not here, to make sure that in his birthday they have a cake, things like that, because it's so important that our children don't just lose all their social network if in case that person is not able to take care of them fully, and we don't want to break that relationship. But often, we are hurt, and then we do separate ourselves to be able to have those honest conversations with folks. We also have we don't have it here, but it's another guide that we created for youth to be able to talk to their parents. We don't want to parentify them, but we do know that sometimes being able to come from them and them having those access to talk to the parents, say, Ma, Pa, what are our plans? What would happen, right? We also have a tool to help people find loved ones within the ICE locator system. We have these little cards that we often give. On the left, you see the green one, brave o valiente, is respondiendo al miedo de ICE con valentía, pero también con autocompasión, with self-compassion, because this is hard. We should not be leaving these. So sometimes we're so hard of like, I can't even manage these, but the reality is we shouldn't have. So there's some tips there. And some cards on the side too, and all these resources, we'll send them out. You can print them on your own. They're all downloadable for free. Share them with your community. And we have this one for younger children, which is a fortune teller, and fold and learn about your rights, which we actually created to go along with presentations of Know Your Rights. So usually the parent will bring the children, and the children will be listening. This is hard for them. So we created this little fortune teller, which it talks about taking care of your health, of your heart, but also listening to your parents about a plan. So I'll play it really quick. And the voice, by the way, in there is my little nephew, and he's like, "Yeah, did I do good?" So you hear him trying to read these right there. But this is another tool that you can use with younger children that may not be, we have to use games, we have to use different tools with kids that are like 6 years old, 7 years old.
La mariposa abre sus alas y vuela así. Con la M. Mantén la calma. Respira suave y despacito. Con la O, oye a tu corazón, está bien tener miedo. Es tu corazón protegiéndote. Con la N, no estás solo, siempre hay quien te cuide. Con la A, abrázate fuerte, eres valiente si se puede. Con la R, recuerda tus derechos, tú vales mucho. Con la C, cuida tu corazón, está bien sentir miedo, es tu corazón protegiéndote. Con la A, acuerda un plan con tus papis o adultos para estar seguro.
Yeah, so you put that together with, like, if the parents are already doing an emergency plan, now you're talking with the kids, what is a plan, Mom? Like, and how do we listen to that, but also take care of our hearts? Lastly, I wanted to share, this is a toolkit that we created right after the elections as well. And don't worry that it says for immigration and human rights advocates, though I know that we have increased our number of advocates in this last year, which I love. But it's for anybody. And it talks about grief. It talks about the grief in the context of what are we losing in our communities because of ICE enforcement right now, the stages of grief and how do we cope with it. It talks about moral injury, which is getting into trying to help but not being able to. And that creates this cognitive dissonance, this change that is really hard for us to do. And it has tons of resources, affirmations that are very culturally relevant. Esto fue hecho con muchísimo corazón. We have it in digital, in print way, in Spanish and English. You can download it in our resource page in our website. And, of course, I always say, tú también importas, you also matter, cuídate, quiérete, apapáchate, whatever that looks like, because the way that you care for yourself also is modeling for the youth that you serve and your children and our communities. So with that, I'll go back and pass it to for our questions and answers. So I'll stop sharing.
Muchas gracias, Diana. Yeah, I was just sitting here wanting to comment, but also wanting to give a lot of space for you to share. But I just am so grateful for all these different resources. I think they are so incredible. Even your nephew, you said, reading the
fortune teller.
Yeah, so cute. I mean, also can read Spanish, really incredible. Yeah, so thank you so much for sharing. I also just want to highlight and mention, I love that you mentioned the importance of our caregivers, families, people who are, doing programs with families and youth that are impacted, the importance of us taking care of ourselves and checking in with ourselves, asking for support when we need it. Yeah, that is such important work, and I'm really glad that you highlighted that, because that's how we can also show up for others and those meet us that are in our lives. We do have some questions. I think your presentation covered so much, and so I have a few questions for you. And yeah, whatever you'd like to add, we're really happy to get to learn from you. So one question that has come up, people wondering, what are a few immediate steps that caregivers, youth program providers can take to create emotionally safe spaces for youth who might be experiencing this stress or fear related to immigration issues that are happening right now?
First of all, being present. That's the key. We forget how important it is to just have one caring person that is there. They have many years ago, I did this acronym about, because we've been working with immigrant youth for so long too, that's called A-CLIP. And I will bring this little clip too here. You can see it. I actually got these about the clip. I saw this movie way back in the day, and now aging myself. I like Made in Manhattan, and it was like with Jennifer Lopez and the little kid in the movie. He was so nervous about public speaking, right? And then the main character in the movie show him to have a clip and to try to put all the stressors visually in it, right? This is like 20-year-old movie, and it stuck with me for the longest time because the little kid like was holding it and got like so much like power from holding it and putting there that he was able to do a beautiful speech, right? So just trying to figure it out, I did this ACLIP. This is just an acronym. So it just acknowledge and name what's real. Don't avoid it. One of the biggest things that we do is for fear of traumatizing children, we avoid talking about it, and immediately we're negating their experience. So to be able to feel comfortable in naming that what's happening shouldn't be normal and that is causing damage. So acknowledging that, that's the one. Check in with their corazón, check in with their heart, not just the how are you doing, but like really, ¿cómo estás, mijo? Like what's going on? What's going on in your life today? From 1 to 10, where you think you might be? That's always a good one. Of course, for the L is listen. Listen to what they have to say and what they already know and what they already used. Even if it's a 13-year-old, most of the 13-year-olds that we work with and that we have in our lives have already experienced some things and they have made it. So ask them, what has worked for you before? And then you can incorporate other tools, right? Add simple supports like either breathing or being present or doing some movement, which is what I love about Latino Outdoors, because it's really introducing that piece that helps people bring out, like they may not have that experience, which is fantastic. And then just be present. Consistency matters more than perfection. I always say that consistency matters more than perfection. Try to show up, and showing up is much better than not showing up and being there for them. So those are like quick things that you can do. And remember the A clip, which is acknowledge, check in with their corazón, listen to what they already worked for them, incorporate new tools if you have them, like something that worked for you. Now share with the kid, right? And see like, what do you think about that? And they may say, I don't like it. That's okay. Fine. Then they will share something with you and just be present.
Thank you, Diana. Yeah, I love all these resources. I love the acronym too. I think that will be really helpful for like in a moment when you're like, oh my gosh, I don't know what to say or do. A great resource to follow up on. Yeah, I know in having conversations with youth, they're really just wanting sometimes somebody to just be able to listen with no judgment, right? Like showing up and yeah, somebody who's like as an adult is also willing to have some of those hard conversations. And so I I'm glad that you brought up this like anxiety around like being maybe scared to expose children to things that we don't know if they might understand, or just being nervous. And I think that is something that I've heard quite a bit from some parents, caretakers, people who work with youth, feeling anxious about having conversations related to ICE in our country, to detention, and what that looks like. And I'm curious, I know you have an amazing resource that will, kind of help people in how to have these conversations. I'm curious, what advice do you have to these caregivers, people that work with youth who might be nervous about having these conversations with children and youth? Is there any other advice that you would offer them?
That it's okay to be nervous and to acknowledge that you're nervous. The hardest part is to be able to, we try to put that face on, right? But what we don't realize is that by us actually saying, I am also nervous. And sometimes I get a little angry, a lot angry. Sometimes I get really nervous or fearful. And that is okay. It's okay, I'm going to be cliche, but it's okay to not be okay. And what does that look like for you? And also asking the kids, what's your understanding of what's happening? Because we also think, I'm going to try to like keep them here. I'm not going to tell them. the kid has already been in social media for an hour that day. They already knew all the news. They already knew that there was a raid here, there was this and that and that. So asking them, hey, have you heard of anything today? What's your understanding of what's going on? And having them being able to guide you where they are, it's really, really key. And for us, that's not normal. Like, at least I didn't grow up with being asked, oh, what's your understanding of these? It was like, no, lo que te digo, and that's it, right? So to be able to change, we have some beautiful things in our culture that we can hold on, and there's some things that we can improve. And being able to give our youth that gift that it is of asking them, learning from them, giving them that space to tell you how they feel is great. And for us as adults to take a breather and just be like, that is my own anxiety, right? That's for me to deal with. And what do I need to do? And we go back to the very first slide. What am I carrying into this conversation with the youth and this interaction with these youth that may be something that I need to deal with on my own, right?
I appreciate, Diana, too, that you mentioned, your experience that you had as a young person, and very similarly for me, like, it was not bad intention. My parents, like, I have only been recently realizing, like, oh, we never talked about, like, when a police officer would come by and like being scared of, like, yeah, they like the fact that they weren't documented and what that meant. And now growing up and being able to have this conversation with you, I'm learning so much about how I can show up in the lives of the young people who, are in my life. So I love that you bring that up. And yeah, like you said, like, let's keep learning, and it's the healing work that you were saying we can do together. So thank you for sharing that.
Of course.
Yeah. And I have one final question. Well, maybe two final questions. But one is, I think there are a lot of folks who might not have had the experience of being stressed about, like, immigration, detention, ICE. Maybe they've been in the country for a while, their families been here for generations, and many, many different reasons. But what are some ways that you think those folks might be able to show up supportively for those who might be more impacted?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. And, I think even if you're not, people say I'm not directly impacted. I'm not impacted at all. I think if you live in any part in the United States, if you have open social media anytime in the last year, you have been impacted as well. You may not, you may be a US citizen, you may be third, fourth, fifth generation, your family may have already been here forever. But if you've seen, what we're seeing is human rights violations. And all of us are impacted by that. And it feels always like such a big thing. And people often ask me, it's like, Diana, I feel like, what can yo chiquitito, what can I do? What can I possibly do, this tiny little person in this massive amount of hurt? And I always tell them, start where you're at. Start with something that you're really good at, that you're really comfortable with. Do you bake cakes? Fantastic. I know an agency that recruits folks around the country to do birthday cakes for immigrant youth that don't have somebody to give them that, or for youth in foster care. And, do you play guitar? Fantastic. There has to be somebody in your community that is running a support group that teaches kids how to deal with emotions. How about teaching them how to play the guitar for it? Whatever it is that you're really good at, start there, because that's the easiest thing. And try to just pick one thing. We cannot be everywhere. It's exhausting. We're not, our bodies and our minds and our hearts, we're not designed for this. So if you're going to try to be in the protest, you're also trying to donate. You're also trying to go to therapy, taking your kids to therapy. Now you're trying to being an advocate and doing, social media stuff. You're going to burn out. It is difficult. Pick one thing and be gracious with others. I recently had this conversation with somebody, that a dear friend of mine, and we're in good terms now. But she's like, I am really upset that you're not showing up at this protest. Like how come? Like, that's not okay. Well, I I have been in protests for many years, and my way right now of giving back to my communities looks different. And it may be because I have an immunocompromised system and I can't be in public like that. So maybe for me, it looks like, and it does look like, picking up groceries for somebody and delivering them to their home without having contact. It looks like doing some pro bono workshops on things that our community can do. It may look like just buying a coffee to my neighbor that's having a hard time. So pick something that is easy for you, and know that it doesn't matter how small you think it is, the impact that will have for your immigrant communities or your friends or your loved ones is huge.
Yeah, absolutely. I think about like there's all these different analogies for it, but like all the drops in the bucket that like eventually become like this huge like ocean of support. Like it all does make a difference. So yeah, I love that you talk about using our strengths and like what that can look like. And I think too like that's something that I've liked to do with the youth too, who sometimes are like, oh, I don't really know what I can do, and like these are part of it. Hey, that's your strength.
Exactly.
Yeah, how do we
Yeah.
make that and show up as a community?
Absolutely. And that brings me to one slide that I didn't show you. And I like to tell this story because it's exactly what you're saying. And it's about a hummingbird back. It's a folk tale from Ecuador. And it's a hummingbird that was in the Andes Mountains, and there was this big fire. And the hummingbird was going back from the river to the fire with a little tiny like water drop, right? And he was flying back and forth through the river, putting the water and the fire back to the river again and again. And all the animals in the forest, the bears, the deers, they were making fun of them. You see, like, you tiny little thing, ¿qué vas a hacer? Con ese piquito chiquito, you're so tiny, you're not going to make a difference. He finally got so tired and turned around and said, I'm doing what I can, right? And that's for us right now when it feels like our world is on fire, our community is on fire. Do what you can, do your little drop of water, whatever that looks like for you, for your heart, do your drop for your heart to take care of yourself, and your heart for your community.
That's kind of that story. My final question for you, is there anything that we haven't asked you about that we haven't addressed yet that you feel like you would like for our audience to know?
I think one of the things that, and I always like to put a plug in, if you ever want to get involved and you want to support us in any way, the best way possible is to say our name in rooms that we're not in yet. Corazón Norte is pretty, we only been in business for 2 years, so we would love to bring any workshops and healing opportunities to your community, if that's virtual, if that's in person, and also to be able to share the resources that we have. Everything that we do, every single resource we have created, and they're free to our community to download. Help us get that word out, help us get those water droplets to your community, and hopefully it helps others. And of course, take care of yourselves. That's the best thing that we can always do. And thank you again for all the work that you, Latino Outdoors. I am so in awe in the beauty of the work that you do.
Yeah, I'm really grateful. And I asked my family to tune in, so hopefully they've done that. So yes, we will keep spreading the word about Corazón Norte. Yeah, I want to share real quick with other folks who are here watching. Latino Outdoors is offering a free workshop, also in partnership with Hope for Miami, to do a youth mental health first aid training. So you can get a free certification. You can find out more about this by visiting the website that's been linked here. We're offering 2 days. It's a virtual hybrid type training, some like online work, and then also some like Zoom work that you can do, but it's self-paced. And so the days are, I don't think I mentioned them, April 29th and April 30th. So yeah, you can visit Latino Outdoors website to learn more and to sign up. I think this will be an amazing way to continue this learning that Diana has brought for us here today, and to continue to build your toolkit as you're navigating, having conversations with the youth in your life. And yeah, Diana, before we say goodbye, is there anything else that you would like for us to know?
No, but take advantage of that that certification. The mental health first aid is super helpful, and it will give you just quick tools. That is an amazing tool, and how cool that you offer it. So take advantage of that, and that's all.
So much, Diana. We're so grateful for you. Thanks for offering up your time and for sharing so much with us. I'm hoping that we'll get to see each other again soon.
Of course. Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye.